They're here.
Missouri isn't just the show-me state, it's the state where the dead refuse to rest. From forgotten prisons to mansions of madness, every town here hides a story that blurs the line between history and horror. Tonight, we're taking you deep into the shadows where whispers echo through abandoned halls. Footsteps follow when no one's there, and the past refuses to stay buried. These are the top 15 haunted places in Missouri, if you dare to keep watching. 1. Missouri State Penitentiary, Jefferson City. They called it the bloodiest 47 acres in America. For decades, the Missouri State Penitentiary stood as a monument to punishment, its stone walls swallowing screams that never made it out. But what if those screams never really stopped locals? Whisper that when the sun dips behind Jefferson City's horizon, something inside the abandoned cell blocks still stirs the restless echoes of the damned. Visitors describe it the same way: an instant chill, a breath on the back of the neck, the feeling of being watched by someone or something unseen. Flashlights flicker near death row, right where the electric chair once stood. Tour guides swear they've seen shadows pacing the hallway, as if inmates still serve a sentence that never ends. One woman fainted after hearing a voice whisper her name from an empty cell. When she woke, deep scratches marked her arm, but no one was close enough to touch her. Historians say more than 100 men died here: riots, murders, executions. But believers think the number doesn't matter. The place itself remembers. The iron bars hum with trapped energy, the walls soaked with decades of rage, regret, and blood. Some paranormal investigators even claim to have recorded voices begging for freedom, and one chilling word repeated again and again: stay. So, if you ever find yourself near Jefferson City, staring at that crumbling fortress under the moonlight, would you dare to step inside? They say once you hear the whisper behind those rusted doors, it's already too late to turn back. 2. Lemp Mansion, St. Louis. In the heart of St. Louis stands a grand, old mansion, elegant on the outside, cursed within. The Lemp Mansion once belonged to one of the city's richest brewing families. But behind the laughter, the luxury, and the clinking of beer glasses, darkness brewed, and it never left. They say every tragedy leaves a mark, and this house carries many. It began with William Lemp's empire, wealth, fame, and success. But when his beloved son died unexpectedly, grief consumed him. He locked himself away in the mansion and took his own life, one by one. The rest of the family followed 4 suicides, all within these same walls. Since then, the house has refused to sleep. Guests report doors slamming on their own, footsteps pacing the halls, and cold spots that vanish as quickly as they appear. One caretaker swore he saw a man in Victorian clothes standing by the bar when he blinked. The figure was gone, leaving only the faint scent of cigar smoke. Paranormal teams describe voices echoing from the basement brewery, glasses moving on their own, and mirrors reflecting faces that aren't there. Some say the Lemp family still lingers, bound to their mansion by sorrow and shame. Others believe the house itself has absorbed their despair, feeding on anyone who dares to enter. If you visit today, you might dine in one of its restored rooms, smiling for photos, unaware of the shadows just beyond the candlelight. But remember, every toast you make echoes through time, and the Lemp family might just be listening, waiting for someone new to join their eternal feast. Would you dare stay the night? Three, Epperson House, Kansas City. At first glance, the Epperson House in Kansas City looks like a fairy tale mansion, grand staircases, stained glass, and a haunting beauty that draws you in. But beneath its elegance lies one of Missouri's most chilling legends. Built in the early 1900s by wealthy businessman Uriah Epperson, the house became more than a home. It became a tomb of sorrow, where the living and the dead seemed to share the same space. They say it all began with Harriet Barse, a close friend of the Epperson family. Some even whispered she was more than that. When Harriet died suddenly before the house was finished, her spirit never left. Workers refused to return after hearing footsteps echoing across empty halls and the faint sound of organ music playing late at night, Harriet's favorite instrument. Even now, long after the mansion became part of a university campus, security guards report doors unlocking themselves, lights turning on in rooms sealed for decades, and the chilling melody of an unseen organ drifting through the corridors. One night, an officer patrolling the grounds claimed he saw a glowing figure in a blue gown glide across the balcony before vanishing through a closed door. When he checked, the air inside was ice cold and the scent of lilacs filled the room. Harriet's signature perfume. Others have heard her voice whispering softly near the grand staircase, as if inviting them to stay forever. Today, the Epperson house stands silent, locked behind iron gates. Yet locals say that on quiet Kansas City nights, you can still hear that lonely organ playing a love song for a life that ended too soon. So tell me, if the door creaked open and the music called your name, would you step inside? For Pythian Castle, Springfield. At the edge of Springfield stands a fortress that looks like it belongs in a fairy tale. Tall towers, stone walls, and arched windows that glow under the moonlight. But don't be fooled by its beauty. The Pythian Castle holds stories that chill the blood of anyone who dares to listen. Built in 1913 by the Knights of Pythias, it was meant to be a home for widows and orphans. Yet, over time, its purpose twisted. The laughter of children gave way to screams, and the castle's halls became a maze of secrets. During World War II, the U.S. military took over, turning the castle into a prison for German and Italian POWs. Locals said strange lights flickered from the basement at night, and the prisoners spoke of shadows moving without sound. Some even claimed they saw ghostly figures of soldiers wandering the halls, faces pale, eyes hollow, uniforms soaked in blood that never dries. Today, the castle is open for tours, but few stay long after dark. Visitors describe cold hands brushing against their skin, whispers echoing through the chapel, and the faint hum of a woman singing in the ballroom, though no one is ever there. Paranormal teams have recorded disembodied voices saying, "Help me," and "Get out." Even the bravest admit the air inside feels heavy, as if the walls themselves remember the pain they've seen. And yet, the Pythian Castle still stands beautiful, proud, and haunted by the past. Some say it's cursed by the souls who suffered within. Others believe it simply refuses to let go of history. So if you ever pass by its looming gates on a quiet Springfield night, look up at the tower windows. You might just see someone looking back. The question is, will you keep walking, or will you step inside? Art, Jesse James Farm and Museum, Kearney. Tucked away in the quiet countryside of Kearney stands a modest farmhouse, peaceful, unassuming, almost ordinary. But this place holds the spirit of one of America's most notorious outlaws, Jesse James. To the world, he was a legend, a gunslinger, a rebel, a thief. But here, in his childhood home, he's something else entirely. A ghost who refuses to ride off into the sunset. Locals say the land itself feels strange, as if it remembers every shot fired, every drop of blood spilled. Jesse was born here in 1847 and died violently decades later, shot in the back by a man he called a friend. After his death, the farmhouse became a museum, drawing curious visitors and thrill seekers. But not all who come leave untouched. Guides whisper that Jesse never left, that his restless spirit still prowls the rooms, guarding his secrets and his gold. People report hearing the echo of bootsteps on the wooden floor, doors creaking open by unseen hands, and the faint jingle of spurs in the dead of night. Some even claim to see a figure in old Western clothes, watching from the doorway, a man with a shadowed face and cold, piercing eyes. Cameras malfunction near his bedroom, and sudden cold spots appear where no wind can reach. Once, a visitor swore he heard a low, angry voice mutter, "Get off my land." The staff laughs it off during the day, but when the lights go out, none dare to stay behind. The spirit of Jesse James, it seems, still guards his home as fiercely as he did his legend. So, if you ever find yourself in Kearney, standing before that old farmhouse beneath a blood-red sunset, remember outlaws may die, but legends and their ghosts never rest. Would you dare knock on his door after midnight? Six, Walnut Street Inn, Springfield. At first glance, the Walnut Street Inn in Springfield looks like a dream, a charming Victorian bed and breakfast, filled with warmth, laughter, and the sweet scent of morning coffee. But behind the polished wood and soft candlelight lies a history that whispers through every creaking floorboard. This house doesn't just host guests, it keeps them. Built in the late 1800s, the inn has seen its share of joy and heartbreak. During the Civil War, the property stood near the path of soldiers and tragedy. Over the decades, it changed hands many times, each new owner sensing something or someone watching from the shadows. Guests staying in the Carver Room often report the same chilling details. Cold air brushing across their necks, footsteps pacing outside their door, and the faint sound of a woman weeping softly in the night. One story tells of a bride-to-be who stayed here long ago. On the eve of her wedding, her fiancé never returned from battle. Heartbroken, she hung her wedding dress in the room and vanished. Some say she took her own life. Others believe she simply faded away, but her sorrow never left. To this day, guests claim to see a woman in white gliding down the hallway, her veil trailing behind her, searching, waiting. The innkeepers have even found mirrors fogged with words that appear on their own. One word, most often, stay. During the day, the Walnut Street Inn feels inviting, safe, almost comforting. But when night falls, the mood shifts, lights flicker, clocks stop, and the faint hum of a lullaby echoes from the empty attic. Perhaps it's just the wind, or perhaps it's the lonely bride, still haunting the home she never left. So if you ever check into the Walnut Street Inn and hear soft footsteps outside your room after midnight, don't open the door, because whoever or whatever walks those halls might not be one of the living. So, Wilson's Creek National Battlefield Republic. Under the quiet skies of Republic, Missouri, stretches a field that seems peaceful, rolling hills, whispering grass, the chirp of crickets. But to those who know its past, Wilson's Creek is no ordinary battlefield. This is sacred ground, soaked in blood, echoing with the screams of one of the Civil War's deadliest clashes. And they say, not all who fell here ever left. On August 10th, 1861, the air thundered with cannon fire. Nearly 2,500 men lost their lives in just a few brutal hours. When the smoke cleared, the once green fields were painted red, and the cries of the dying haunted the valley. Locals swear those cries never faded, they only grew quieter, blending into the night wind. Visitors who walk the trails after dark tell of gunshots that echo from nowhere, faint battle drums in the distance, and the ghostly figure of a young soldier limping through the fog, calling for his brother who never answered. Rangers have reported flickering lantern lights moving across the ridge, but when they check, the fields are empty. Some have seen men in tattered Confederate gray standing at attention beneath the moonlight, only to vanish when approached. Horses whinny from unseen stables, and a cold mist rolls in from nowhere, carrying the scent of smoke and gunpowder. It's said that the spirits here refight the battle every year on its anniversary, locked in a loop of violence and sorrow they can never escape. Paranormal teams have recorded whispers like, "Hold the line," and "Don't leave me." But perhaps the eeriest reports come from those who feel a hand on their shoulder, cold, desperate, pleading in the exact spot where hundreds fell. So when you visit Wilson's Creek and feel the wind shift, listen closely. The silence isn't empty, it's filled with memories and the restless souls of men who still fight for a cause long lost to time. Would you dare walk that battlefield after midnight, knowing the war there might never truly be over? At 8, Knob Noster State Park, Johnson County. In the heart of Johnson County lies Knob Noster State Park, a place of quiet lakes, winding trails, and towering oaks that seem to whisper secrets to the wind. By day, it's peaceful, almost enchanting. But when night falls, the forest changes. The air grows heavy, the silence thick, and locals warn don't wander the trails after dark. Because in these woods, the living aren't the only ones who roam. Long before the park was built, the land was home to a small settlement, a mining camp that vanished mysteriously in the 1800s. According to legend, a fire swept through the area, consuming everything in minutes. dozens died, their bodies never found. Some say their souls remain, lost and angry, bound to the ashes beneath the soil. Campers have reported hearing muffled screams in the distance, followed by the sound of picks striking stone, as if the miners are still working, still trapped underground. But it's not just voices. Hikers tell of ghostly lights drifting through the trees, flickering like lanterns leading them deeper into the forest. Those who follow never find a source, only the sudden feeling of being surrounded, watched by unseen eyes. Park rangers have discovered campsites abandoned in panic, fires left burning, belongings scattered, as if something had chased the campers away. The most chilling tale is of the Lady in Smoke. They say she appears near the lake on foggy nights, a woman in burnt, tattered clothes, her face pale and half hidden. She reaches out, whispering, "Help me find my family," before vanishing into mist. Those who've seen her claim they wake with burns on their arms the next morning. Faint but real. Knob Noster State Park may look serene beneath the moonlight, but every gust of wind carries echoes of the past cries of the forgotten, the lost, the restless. So if you ever find yourself walking those trails and the fog begins to rise, don't follow the lights, because once you do, you might never find your way back out. In Jacques-Gibourd Historic House, Sainte-Geneviève. In the old French town of Geneviève, where cobblestone streets whisper with history, stands a grand Creole-style home, elegant, timeless, and eerily alive. The Jacques-Gibourd Historic House, built in 1806, has seen centuries of laughter, sorrow, and secrets. But locals say it still hosts its original residents, even long after their deaths. Jacques-Jean René Gibourd de Louzieres, a French immigrant, built the home after escaping the horrors of the Haitian Revolution. He believed he'd found peace here, a new beginning. But the echoes of the past followed him. Some claim he brought more than memories from the Caribbean. He brought a curse. Servants once whispered of strange rituals in the attic, of candles burning long after midnight, and shadows that moved even when no one was there. When Gibourd died in the house, neighbors reported hearing soft French prayers drifting through open windows and footsteps pacing the floors above. Today, the house is a museum, beautifully preserved, but not all its inhabitants are visible. Visitors have felt icy hands on their shoulders, heard whispers in French when no one else was nearby, and seen the faint figure of a man standing at the top of the staircase, watching silently. Guides often smell cigar smoke in the parlor, though smoking has been banned for decades. Paranormal investigators have captured disembodied voices on recorders, one repeating, "Je suis ici," "I am here." At night, passers-by say, the attic windows glow with flickering light, as if someone still keeps vigil inside. Some think it's Gibourd himself, guarding his home against intruders. Others believe it's something older, something brought across the sea, bound forever to this house of secrets. So, if you ever walk through Genevieve's quiet streets and see that stately old house under the moonlight, look up at the attic window. If a shadow moves, if a curtain stirs, don't stare too long. because whoever watches from inside might just be watching you. To Parlor Bed and Breakfast, Ironton. Nestled in the small, quiet town of Ironton, the Parlor Bed and Breakfast welcomes guests with warm lights, vintage charm, and the soft creak of old wood that seems to breathe with life. But behind its graceful Victorian beauty lies something far darker. Those who stay the night often leave with stories they can't explain and memories they wish they could forget. Built in the late 1800s, the parlor was once a private home owned by a wealthy family whose name has long been lost to time. Legend says tragedy struck one bitter winter night, a fire, a scream, and a family that vanished without a trace. The house was rebuilt, but the energy within never changed. Locals say that on cold nights, the faint smell of smoke seeps through the walls, and the sound of crying echoes through the parlor. Even when the rooms are empty, guests report waking at exactly 3:13 Every clock stopped. Every sound gone except for the slow, deliberate footsteps in the hallway. Some have seen a woman in a dark Victorian dress standing at the foot of their bed, her face pale and eyes hollow, whispering, "Why won't you leave?" One terrified guest claimed to see her reflection smiling in the mirror, even though she wasn't. When he turned around, the room was empty, except for the faint imprint of a hand on the glass. The owners say the spirits are harmless, just lonely souls. But paranormal teams disagree. They've recorded whispers begging for help, flickering lights spelling out names, and sudden temperature drops that make the air freeze in seconds. One investigator left mid-session, muttering, "Something in there doesn't want us alive." Still, travelers come, curious, daring, or foolish, drawn by the inn's reputation as one of Missouri's most haunted lodgings. By day, it's charming. By night, it's a nightmare wrapped in lace. So if you ever find yourself in Ironton, tempted to book a room at the Parlor Bed and Breakfast, remember this once the clock strikes 3:13. The house wakes up and it never sleeps again. Joseph M. Miller Mausoleum, Holden. Hidden among the quiet hills of Holden, Missouri, stands a lonely stone crypt, the Joseph M. Miller Mausoleum. Isolated, weather-worn, and eerily beautiful, it's a place that locals avoid after sundown. Some call it a memorial, others a trap for the restless dead. What happened inside its cold marble walls has become one of Missouri's most chilling ghost stories. Joseph Miller was a wealthy man in life, respected, powerful, and obsessed with the idea of eternity. When he died in the early 1900s, he demanded a grand resting place, one that would stand forever. But something about the mausoleum never felt right. Workers reported strange noises while building it, whispers from the sealed tombs, tools vanishing, and cold gusts that came from nowhere. One mason swore he saw a face watching him from the dark interior, though the doors hadn't even been installed yet. Not long after Miller was entombed, visitors began hearing voices inside. Soft at first, faint murmurs, sighs, but growing clearer over time. Some heard the words, "Let me out." Others swore they saw shadows moving behind the stained glass windows. Even on moonless nights, The local caretaker once entered to investigate strange noises and ran out moments later, white as chalk, claiming he'd heard the sound of fingernails scraping from inside one of the vaults. As the decades passed, the mausoleum fell into decay. Vandals who dared to enter often found their flashlights dying, their equipment malfunctioning, or worse, leaving with long scratches across their arms. Paranormal teams recorded what they described as agonized moaning, reverberating through the marble walls, as though multiple voices cried out at once. Some say Joseph Miller's spirit is still trapped there, cursed by his own obsession with immortality. Others believe he's not alone, that something else has claimed the crypt as its own. Today, the Joseph M. Miller Mausoleum stands silent, surrounded by weeds and shadows, its heavy doors chained shut. But on still nights, locals say you can hear a deep, hollow knocking from within 3 slow raps, echoing through the darkness. So if you ever find yourself near Holden after midnight and hear that sound, whatever you do, don't answer, because the dead, once disturbed, might not want to stay buried. Edge of Hell, Kansas City. In the heart of Kansas City stands the Edge of Hell. It's America's oldest haunted attraction and, some say, one of its most real. Built in a 19th century warehouse once used as a morgue, the building has seen things no one can explain. Employees speak of flickering lights, footsteps pacing empty corridors, chikiu, and whispers that echo long after the crowds leave. Legend says the haunt's creators stirred something they couldn't control. Beneath the screams of visitors, some claim to hear voices that don't belong, low, mournful, and ancient. Security cameras catch shadows moving when no one's inside. One worker swears he saw a figure crawling up the wall like an insect, vanishing into the ceiling. Even seasoned performers refuse to be alone after midnight. They say the basement, once a tunnel to the river, is colder than death itself. And sometimes, you can hear chains dragging across the floor. Whether it's clever illusion or true haunting, no one knows for sure. But if you ever visit the Edge of Hell, remember, not every scream you hear belongs to the living. Beatty Mansion, St. Joseph. Perched high on a hill overlooking St. Joseph, the Beatty Mansion seems timeless, elegant, still and watching. Built in 1854 by Armstrong and Eliza Beatty, the home once symbolized wealth and respect. But after their deaths, the mansion's purpose changed, and so did its energy. It became a refuge for the poor, a home for the aged, and later, a shelter for the mentally ill. Each chapter left something behind: whispers, shadows, and sorrow that never left its walls. Visitors describe cold spots, ghostly figures gliding through the halls, and doors that slam without wind. Many have heard voices calling from the empty rooms upstairs, some pleading, others angry. One caretaker reported seeing a woman in a black dress standing at the window, staring into the night. When he blinked, she was gone, but her reflection lingered in the glass. Paranormal investigators call the Beatty Mansion one of Missouri's most active sites. Recorders capture disembodied laughter, faint piano music, and whispers saying, "Don't leave me." Some claim the spirits of former residents still wander, confused and lost, trapped in the only home they ever knew. By day, The Beatty Mansion looks peaceful, almost welcoming. But after dark, the air turns heavy and the walls seem to breathe. Locals say that if you walk past after midnight, you can see lights flicker in the upper windows and sometimes a pale face watching from the shadows. Would you dare look back if it looked at you first? (14) Ravenswood Mansion, Bunseton. Deep in the quiet countryside near Bunseton stands Ravenswood Mansion, a grand, fading relic of Missouri's past. Built in the 1880s for wealthy landowner Nadine and Charles Leonard, it once hosted lavish parties filled with music, laughter, and luxury. But today, the house sits in eerie silence, its empty halls echoing with the ghosts of its former glory. And perhaps its former guests. Locals call it the house that won't die. Strange lights glow in the windows long after dark, and visitors claim to hear footsteps pacing the upper floors even though the mansion has been empty for decades. Tour guides have reported hearing piano music drifting from the parlor, only to find the keys moving by themselves. Some say the spirit of Nadine Leonard, who refused to abandon her beloved home even after death, still roams the corridors in her favorite gown, checking on guests as if the party never ended. The mansion's grand staircase is said to be the most haunted spot. People feel unseen hands brushing their shoulders or a sudden chill as if someone has just passed by. One visitor swore she heard a woman's soft voice whisper, "Stay for the evening," though no one else was there. By daylight, Ravenswood is beautiful, a masterpiece of Victorian charm, surrounded by open fields and silence. But when the sun sets, the air thickens and the house comes alive. Locals say if you stand outside under the moonlight, you might hear laughter from a century ago, a ghostly toast to a time that will never return. So, if you ever find yourself near Bunseton after dark and see Ravenswood's windows flicker with candlelight, remember the lady of the house still entertains, and she's always looking for one more guest to stay. Errant 15. Fabulous Fox Theater St. Louis. In the heart of St. Louis, the fabulous Fox Theater dazzles with golden arches, crimson velvet, and a history steeped in glamour and ghosts. Opened in 1929, it was once a palace of dreams, where stars shone bright and audiences gasped in wonder. But behind the glittering stage lights, whispers of something darker echo through its grand halls. Staff and performers alike speak of the man in white, a spectral figure seen roaming the upper balcony, watching rehearsals from the shadows. Some say he's an old stagehand who never left his post. Others believe he's a former manager, still checking that every show runs perfectly, even from beyond the grave. Doors open on their own, chandeliers sway without wind, and cold spots appear suddenly, even on the hottest summer nights. During late-night performances, musicians have reported hearing phantom applause from an empty house. A few claim to have seen a woman in a long gown gliding across the stage, her reflection visible in the mirrors, but her body nowhere to be found. Stage lights flicker in patterns, sometimes spelling out words. Once, they formed a single chilling message: "I'm still here." Though renovated and restored to its former splendor, the Fox Theater holds tight to its ghosts. They linger in the dressing rooms, the balconies, the hidden corridors behind the stage, silent reminders that the show never truly ends. So when you visit the Fabulous Fox and the lights dim before a performance, listen closely. That soft sigh behind you, that faint clap from the dark, it might not be part of the act. After all, at the Fox Theater, the curtain never really falls. So, now you've seen the dark heart of Missouri, 15 places where history never truly died. From haunted prisons to whispering mansions, every shadow hides a story waiting to be told. But here's the thing. Missouri is just the beginning. There are darker secrets out there, buried deeper, screaming louder. If you thought this was chilling, wait until you see what's next. We're heading to America's most cursed towns, places even ghost hunters fear to enter. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and join us on the next journey into the unknown, because the dead might be closer than you think.